agenda. And we do have a special meeting that will be called. What I'd like to do is go through the agenda, and those of you waiting for a decision on a certain item will see which ones we're going to move on. I'm kind of buying some time. I'm waiting for one of my colleagues to have a quorum, I should say, and a forum. So we do have with us, and I'll ask him to come up in a few minutes. I want to thank Mr. Daniel Su for being here with us today, and we'll get to you as soon as we run through the agenda, Mr. Su. On number 2, we're going to take the action to adopt, seeing no cards on 2. On 3, we're going to move on consent, if my colleagues agree. 4 on consent, with their support. 5 consent. On 6, we're going to continue in plum June 8th, in council July 7th, but the clerk tells me that the folks that are here today do want to speak, so we will make sure we make time for that. And then we have a public comment card. And then our special meeting will be covering the Lincoln Place Tenants Association case, so that will be under the special meeting as well. So what we can do is on 6, as you're well aware, we're going to continue it, but let's call up the people that want to speak for the record on number 6. Let's come on up. We have Mr. Doug Haynes and Robert Blue, I believe.
Thank you. My name is Doug Haynes. The proposed Columbia Square development would have significant permanent environmental consequences for Hollywood were it ever to be constructed. It would set major citywide precedents, diminish Hollywood's historic stature, and counter long-term planning goals. The only reassuring thing about this project is it will probably never happen. Representatives for the applicant, Area Property Partners, have readily admitted that they have no operator for the proposed 125-room hotel, that there is currently no market for the 200 luxury residential units, and that they have no tenant for the proposed 443,000 square foot office complex. What they seek from you, however, is a wealth of entitlements that vastly increase the value of their land. Concern over this project is more than mere NIMBYism. It's about selling off the assets of the city with no clear return in community benefits and accepting significant environmental consequences that will permanently lessen the quality of life for all of us. According to the EIR, the proposed development would significantly impact 13 major intersections within a mile of the site, of which 7 would have no possible mitigation, resulting in gridlock. It would also significantly impact 75% of the studied neighborhood street segments. The EIR also identified significant impacts to air quality, noise levels, historic resources, area aesthetics, and scenic views. The entire Columbia Square project the entire Columbia Square complex has been designated an architectural and cultural monument. Yet the proposed development would demolish 2 of its 3 historic studios. Piecemeal demolition of city landmarks solely for the financial gain of the developer has never previously been approved in Los Angeles, and the precedent set in this case would have enormous long-term ramifications. The City Planning Commission also gave Area Property Partners 15 years to use the many entitlements granted for its project and the ability to further extend the entitlements another 10 years or to year 2035. This means that the next City Council member for District 13 would have absolutely no say over the site for his entire 3 terms. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Robert Blue.
Hi, Robert Blue, the Citizens Coalition of Los Angeles. I too am here to speak. I'm an appellant on this project. One of the key things that I hope you can consider is that it's going to really, the precedent we're setting, especially in this economic budget time that the city's facing, there's no reason to give a 15-year entitlement. Even the council office suggested that they would be okay with 10 years, and the local neighborhood council, which I used to be on the board, part of their contingency of approval was a 7-year entitlement period. So I was very surprised. I'm also a board member of Hollywood Heritage, but I'm not speaking on their behalf. But they, even a proponent there, said that the developer is going to flip the property. So why are we taking the risk? And it's a business risk for the city to give a 15-year entitlement. The other thing I'm very concerned about is the historical cultural monument status of the entire site. And I hope you would consider, and I'm hoping to see the ordinance moved ahead that we're planning on updating since 1962. I would hope you consider that the precedent that would set. Not only does a project overwhelm this historic site, it really is a gift to the city, that this beautiful site, but also it does set a precedent for other future projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blue. And that takes care of the public comment part of item 6 that's been continued to June 8th and council July 7th. I've been joined by the Honorable Councilmember Paul Krikorian, and we've done Councilmember with your approval. We've essentially we have our candidate, Mr. Daniel Sir, who will be coming to the microphone in a minute. On 2, we move for adoption. 3, 4, and 5, we move on consent. 6, we continued. And 7, we don't have a card on 7, so we would continue that to July 6th and council July 21st. And with your approval, we can move on those items. Thank you, sir. And next, I'd like to call up Mr. Daniel Sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Now, this is for the Area Planning Commission Central Los Angeles term ending June 30th, 2013, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's a whole 3 years. Okay. First, I want to thank you for stepping up and serving the city. And given your background, you have an array of experiences and many different levels of business, which is great, and you have a strong focus on community. And I'd just like for you to share a little bit about yourself, and I'll ask Councilman Krikorian if he has any questions, and I'll ask you one last question. Can you share a little bit about yourself and why do you want to be in this position?
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. A little bit about myself is I've been in business for about 11 years, all sorts of small businesses, national franchises, hospitality industry, service-based industries, and in doing so in the 11 years, I've have had to work with a lot of the community, a lot of community neighborhoods, working with the city, and as far as and then having a good relationship with my entire community as a whole. Given the opportunity to serve, I believe I can bring a balanced approach to this commission. I believe I can bring an open mind to hear both community, both business, and be vital to the betterment of our community.
Great. Thank you, sir. Councilman, have any questions for our candidate? Okay. Just a parting question. When you leave this experience, what would you leave behind? What kind of imprint you would like to establish in this body?
Given the opportunity to serve, I really want to leave with a sense of knowing that I've helped my community in hearing both neighborhood business opportunities and in whatever comes before me to really help the community and be a vital force in knowing that I've supported and helped a lot of people.
Great. We've been joined by Councilman Roussard, and he's a candidate for the Central Area Planning Commission. Do you have any questions for Mr. Sir? I'd like to move that we approve your candidacy, and we have a second on that. And again, thank you for serving the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Colleagues, we've gone through the agenda and we moved on the actions. We've just heard from Mr. Sir, who is a candidate for the Central LA Area Planning Commission. On 2, we move to adopt. 3, 4, and 5 are on consent. 6 has been continued, although we did allow for public comment on that item. 7 we continued, and 9 is a special meeting on a special agenda, and that we'll take on after we're done with the business here. I believe what's left is, thank you, is our report from our director.
Excuse me, Councilman. I believe you have speaker cards for item number 1.
For number 1. Okay, my apologies. John Choi, come on up. You already heard what we had to say, but we'll hear from you. My apologies, I didn't see that.
Good afternoon. My name is John Choi, and I'm here speaking on behalf of Maria Elena Durazo and the LA County Federation of Labor. I'm here to express the LA Labor Movement's support for the Lincoln Place project. Tomorrow, City Council will be urging the full council body to approve the tenant settlement agreement and to move quickly to identify the remaining funding.
Mr. Choi, is this for the candidate, or is this on another issue?
Yeah,
Sorry, this is on Lincoln Place?
yeah, that will be the subject of a special meeting.
Oh, this is on number 1 on the special meeting.
Okay.
Okay, my apologies, we're going to be right there.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
okay,
Sorry about that.
okay, good. No problem. And, okay, Councilmember?
Thank you very much, Chairman Reyes. I just had a couple of things that I wanted to mention today. Recently, this committee addressed a motion that was made by the City Council to change the schedule for implementation of the overhead on all of the planning department new fees that were adopted in October. And you'll recall when the fees were adopted, the council as a whole determined that the overhead would be phased over a 3-year period, that last year they would impose no overhead, and for the upcoming fiscal year it would be half, and then next, the following fiscal year would be the last half of the overhead. A council motion was made recently. You addressed this and recommended that we go forward with all of the overhead in this fiscal year. That same motion was referred to Budget and Finance, and that committee, on a vote of 3-1, recommended that we continue with the phasing that was initially adopted, so that will be addressed later at the City Council. I wanted to briefly mention that we continue to work on the reorganization of the department. We are continuing to refine our reorganization plan. We are currently involved in a fairly massive training program within the planning department. There are 8 or 9 different training sessions that are being offered to all of the planners and to all of our staff, whether they are actual planners or whether they support the planning efforts. And this is to prepare for our reorganization so that the planners will have a broader understanding of all of the work that we do, and we think that this is going to make a big difference. As we further refine our reorganization plan, we will provide a briefing for all of the council deputies, and we will make certain that everyone who is interested in the reorg has an opportunity to review it, to understand it carefully. But our intent with the reorganization is to be more efficient, to hold our planners and ourselves more accountable in terms of time frames. So we are not only going forward with what is the biggest reorganization to ever occur in the planning department. I believe that 90% of the department will be doing something different than they're doing today, but it will come with a new reporting system and an accountability system where we will be able to track our projects better and provide, we hope, better accountability and better transparency for the community members to follow our projects. So we will continue to let you know how that's going, and we would not expect to begin implementation until probably mid-July, as we are preparing now.
Great. I think what's critical here, and it's fairly historical in my mind, is that we're finally giving the planning function as a discipline a dollar value,
Yes.
so that we're not dependent on general fund dollars, and we're actually creating that nexus between our performance of our staff, the performance and economy, and how we capture those opportunities in our built-out environment as we move in the various community plans in the city. So, go ahead.
I think that the thing that communities are most excited about with the reorganization is that we have talked for a long time about breaking down what have often been referred to as the planning department's sort of functional silos, subdivisions here, zoning here, other cases here, very different functional silos, and we're creating geographic teams where the teams will do the full range of planning activity in a geographic area. I think it will allow them to better know the communities that they're working in. I think it will create better relationships between the community and the planners that are working in the community, and the neighborhoods are very excited to have that kind of a model.
So I just want to emphasize one point, because we heard this during the discussion. One perspective has been that we are benefiting just the developers. And I think the development community plays a critical role in our city, but just as critical are the homeowner associations, the neighborhood councils, the various groups that make up this great metropolis we call Los Angeles, and they also will have a sense of value in terms of how this reorg and how these dollars flow into the city that will hopefully capture a sense of place and how it's being defined by all the stakeholders, not just the folks with the investment angle. So that's
We
something I
agree.
want to emphasize that.
Yes, and we
Okay.
agree.
Councilman Rizal, any comment? Councilman Kokoria? Nope. Well, thank you for the report, and congratulations on the progress. And is there a speaker card on this one? Okay, sir, come on up.
Thank you. Members of the committee, one thing that Ms. Goldberg did not refer to was data. And you all know my concern with regard to SB 1818 and the fact that the City Council needs the data. There are all kinds of buried little time bombs all over the city that are going to be set to go off in the next boom. The people, in order for you gentlemen and ladies and City Council to make policy, you need the data. Part of the original SB 1818 ordinance that was passed required within a year Planning Department to give to the City Council data on, are we destroying more affordable housing than we're creating? What's going on with the SB 1818? Are we promoting speculation, which is not a good thing, or are we promoting development of the kind of affordable housing that's contemplated? Planning is supposed to give the data on this to City Council by February of '09. It's now February, it's now obviously May of '10. Mr. Weezer was nice enough to introduce a follow-up motion in that regard. One of the motions that got passed was his. Still, we're sitting there. So I think in the context of this reorganization, I think it's really important. And now Mr. Krikorian and Mr. Koretz have introduced an SB 1818 motion as well. And the importance there is this economic feasibility component. To what extent must the developers communicate with the community on the economic feasibility to the extent they need the incentives, they need the concessions? These are all very critically important factors to get to where we want to go, to avoid litigation, to make the system move more smoothly. The key is data. I would ask that the committee, to the extent that it can, and I know Gail's under a lot of pressure, but you got the support of the neighborhood councils, and I know that we can get you more support in that regard to get this data. And for you, Mr. Reyes, if you could schedule Mr. Weezar's motion, if you could schedule Mr. Krikorian's motion, we could kind of get moving on this. I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Great.
I-
Could you want to respond?
I would like to respond because I don't disagree that data is a really important and valuable tool for making policy decisions. The kind of data that was asked for was not data that the Planning Department alone could do. We are working really closely right now with the Housing Department because half of the data will have to come from them. So we are gathering the data that is relevant from our department. We're working with the Housing Department for them to take it to the next step, and I'm hoping that you will have some reliable data in the not-too-distant future. So it is currently being worked on.
And it's intriguing to see how we can, and I appreciate Mr. Rez's perspectives and sometimes his approach I'm not too fond of, but the fact that he does address the points, and I appreciate that. I guess we all play armchair quarterback every once in a while, so I strongly believe the way the reorg is developing, that we'll have the data to be able to make some hopefully informed decisions. So that being said, that takes care of that item. And I believe that takes care of most of the agenda, right, Roberto?
Yes, with the exception of the Lincoln Place item.
Okay, and that's the special agenda meeting
And-
that I need to bring forth, correct, legally? So we are now going to open the special meeting and engage in the first topic. And Roberto, can you give us the summary on that topic?
Yes, for the special meeting, Councilman, what you have before you is the environmental clearance, and item number 9 on the regular agenda is the actual city attorney report as to the proposed settlement agreement.
Okay, so my understanding is that we'll have the city attorney come forward, and I was hoping to hear from Councilman Rosendahl. Is his office here? Are we expecting him? Okay, so I guess the city attorney can stretch out their sentences. We'll give Councilman Rosendahl a chance to get down here, because I know he really wanted to be here. Okay, you have to pause too much, okay?
I'm trying to slow things down. I have to learn how to push the button on the equipment, and I'll do this in 6 different languages.
Why don't we do this? And I think Councilman Kokora had a good suggestion. Why don't we take public comment first, and buy some time, and then we'll go from there. So now, Mr. Choi, this is the real number 1. Mr. John Choi from LA County Federation of Labor, and we just look at it as a practice session.
All right, that was a good practice, good warm-up.
All right.
So again, my name is John Choi, here on behalf of the LA County Federation of Labor, and speaking in behalf of support of the project, the Lincoln Place project. Tomorrow in City Council, we will be urging the full council body to approve the tenant settlement agreement and to move quickly to identify the remaining funding so that we can be in construction as soon as possible. While the unemployment rate for the city and state continues to hover around 12%, the out-of-work rates for our members that work in the construction industry range from 25 to 50%, depending on the craft. And this matters because the construction industry represents a key sector of our middle class. The apprenticeship programs that our building trades affiliates administer are the best in the country. They provide women and men with the skills and opportunities to earn a decent wage while protecting their family with health benefits, and the quality of their work is top-notch. The LA County Fed and all of our affiliates are excited by the opportunity to partner with AIMCO on this project. We are proud to stand in support of developers and employers that recognize how high-road partnerships with organized labor are good for their projects and good for the community. Furthermore, this project brings needed railroad housing to West LA and is another example of how to take proactive steps towards building green. We urge your support for this project in committee today and look forward to your support in full City Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Choi. Mr. Robert Smith.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Robert Smith with the Painters and Allied Trades.
Yes, sir.
You know, he said it right there, 25 to 50% unemployment, and that's real. And if we can create any jobs, if you can move forward, anything that could create a job would be phenomenal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Well, the best speech so far. Kevin Bass.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Kevin Bass, also with Painters and Allied Trades Union. I'm basically just reiterating what the other two gentlemen said. This project will put a lot of our people back to work in all of our trades, not just mine, but the other union brothers we have here. And we'll put them back to work, and we'll also provide much-needed housing on the west side. So I'm here to just voice my support for the project also. Thank you.
Great, thank you, sir. Okay. My understanding is Councilor Rosendahl is on his way. So we can start with the report. Mr. City Attorney.
Good afternoon, council members. David Michelson with the Office of the City Attorney. With us here today is also part of our negotiating team, that's been hard at work for probably close to, if not more than 2 years, to bring forth to you here a global resolution for Lincoln Place. In the audience, we've got Judy Reel from our office and Colin Courtney. Both have worked very, very hard for a long time, and Ana Ortega from Housing is here as well. Before you here today is the proposed settlement of this long-standing dispute concerning Lincoln Place. Lincoln Place, as you may know, is a 30-acre property in the community of Venice that after World War II was developed with approximately 800 apartments. The future of Lincoln Place has been clouded by the owner's eviction of Lincoln Place tenants and years of complex and very costly litigation. During the past few years, only a handful of the apartment units have remained occupied, leaving hundreds of empty units. Councilmember Bill Rosendahl and his staff have worked tirelessly to bring about a global resolution that would bring justice to the former tenants and restore all of the remaining apartments in a historically sensitive way and under the protections of the city's rent stabilization ordinance. Councilmember Rosendahl was fortunate to have Norm Culla and Arturo Puna on his staff. Both of those individuals have shared the council members' commitment and resolved, and without them, we wouldn't be here today, frankly. The former tenants and the historic preservationists have all entered into their own settlements with the owner of Lincoln Place. The owner's name is Aimco. The city is not a party to those settlement agreements. But importantly, those settlement agreements with the former tenants and with the preservationists are contingent upon the city also settling with Aimco by the end of this month. Good afternoon, council members.
All right, the trumpets have been sounded. Councilman Rosendahl is here.
Exactly. Continue or pause for the council member to make remarks, or what's your pleasure? Yeah, it's okay. We can do that. So Aimco and the city have now also reached their own settlement agreement, which is what you're contemplating today. The city's settlement with Aimco will lead to the dismissal of all of the outstanding lawsuits involving Lincoln Place. The city's settlement, importantly, does not require that the city pay any money, whether in damages or attorney's fees. The city's settlement with Aimco does require that the city form and maintain a working group of city officials and departments who will work with Aimco during the rehabilitation of the apartments. Part of that assistance from the city will involve permits that need to be reviewed and issued for the rehabilitation and construction over the next 2 to 3 years. Another part will be assisting Aimco with seeking funding from various city funding programs. The settlement agreement with Aimco also acknowledges the prior action of the city's Rent Adjustment Commission, which after public hearings this past February authorized the creation of a special class of rental units at Lincoln Place. This special class is only valid for 54 months, which is the approximate time that Aimco will need to complete its construction. It will allow Aimco to set market rents during the construction period and to increase those rents to the market that will exist when the construction is completed and all of the apartments are rehabilitated and rented. So the city attorney's office, Councilmember Bill Rosendahl, the office of the mayor, and the housing department, all of whom have been involved in the negotiations for these many years, all stepped forward in agreement that, in recommending, I should say, the city council approve the settlement agreement. So there are 2 actions that are requested of you today. The first is that your committee recommend to the city council that council determine that the approval of the settlement agreement is categorically exempt from CEQA and approve the filing of the notice of exemption, which was attached to the city attorney's public report. The second action item we recommend today is that your committee recommend that the city council approve of the settlement agreement itself. This matter will be before full city council tomorrow for its review and probable and possible approval. If you have any questions, we'd be pleased certainly to answer those questions.
Well, I think that's the great Reader's Digest version of what happened in the past, maybe, 8 years now?
You know, it's probably been close to 20 years. There's been controversy with Lincoln Place, and a little more than 10 years that there's been litigation literally scores of lawsuits, gone back and forth. Sometimes the city's been on the winning end, other times the city's on the losing end. Importantly, this will be a global resolution brought about because of Councilmember Rosendahl and his staff, Norman Arturo, just really staying focused for all these years to make this happen.
And I can't say enough, sitting next to the right of Councilman Rosendahl in council, to hear his sense of urgency and anguish as this process unfolded. I know how hard he worked and his staff, and they should be given a lot of credit and the intestinal fortitude they demonstrated against all odds, and to get to this point is truly amazing. That in of itself is a story. But to see this come to this place at this time is truly amazing. Councilman Rosendahl, we have several cards in front of us, but I would like to ask you how you would like to proceed. You can speak now, or we can go through the cards, you can speak at the end of the cards. It's up to you. You can push the button too, we can hear your voice there.
I think it'd be great to hear from the communities or the various representatives first, and then I'd be happy to speak after they do.
There's a button right there, Councilman. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. I look forward to the community comments first, and then I'll reflect on that in my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I do know there's a presentation that has been recommended, and what we'll do is we'll ask the applicants to present after the public comments, so that way you can hear what is being observed, comments, and maybe that can help shape the presentation. So with that being said, we'll start with David Ewing. Just keep your eye on the clock. We've got 2 minutes. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, committee members and Councilman Rosendahl. My name is David Ewing. I'm a Venice resident. I'm a very close neighbor to Lincoln Place. I live just up the block from them. And this is just an amazing day. I can't tell you what we've been through as friends of people at Lincoln Place. And Bill Rosendahl is the reason we're here, and his staff, Norm Culla, Mike Bonin in particular, have been phenomenal on this, and it's just a joy to be here. Aimco was a really bad player, and I'm hoping that we're going to have a big kumbaya moment tomorrow. And I think this is a demonstration that when the city really has self-respect and stands up for the people who live here, that wonderful things can happen. I think Aimco's turnaround, and I hope they're going to be a great partner for the city and for the tenants going forward.
So that was a positive from Aimco there. That was a positive, right?
That's a real power. I mean, there's a time to fight and there's a time to bury the hatchet and move forward and all get along. And this is that moment. I would like to say I have a problem. Well, Bill had a motion this morning in City Council about waiving attorney-client privilege in terms of just the terms of a settlement, not the negotiations, not the legal advice, but just the terms of a settlement. And I think that's a good policy in general. And I know how much work has gone into this, and everybody just wants everything to hold together and make it to the finish line. But I do think that's an important concept going forward.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Noel Weiss.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, obviously I'm for this, and the hope and expectation is we can get this accomplished through the close of business tomorrow. Mr. Reyes, in your capacity as chairman, in light of the waiver of the attorney-client privilege, my request is that you have the city attorney incorporate into the council file copies of the Aimco city agreement, the tenant city agreement with Aimco with the amount of dollars excised and then the preservationist agreement, along with a copy of the motion that was passed by the City Council this morning. I think that's important in terms of openness and transparency. There's a lot of creative aspects to this that I think can aid future city council people and members and people in the city, the citizens, to understand what happened, why it happened, how we can avoid making the same mistakes in the future, learning from those mistakes, so that again, this city council, when it makes policy, can do so in a way that I think will accomplish more effectively the objectives that I know that you, Mr. Reyes, and the rest of the city council seek, which is really protecting middle-class housing and providing housing that's affordable. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to reach that objective. The middle class is imploding. This is an opportunity, hopefully, to begin to, go forward in that regard. So it's really important from those perspectives, since there's no issue of attorney-client privilege anymore, to the extent that it ever existed to begin with, that this committee direct the appropriate officials of CLA or the CAO's office to put into the council file these 3 documents. And I would appreciate if you would do that or consider doing that as soon as possible.
Well, thank you for your advice, and I would appeal to our city attorney for his advice, and based on what's been recommended, you don't have to answer now, we can deal with this later, it's up to you.
Just quickly, I'll make the following comment. The city is not a party to the agreement between AIMCO and the tenants, or the settlement agreement with AIMCO and the preservationists. If those parties to those agreements all agree to make their documents publicly viewable, that's one thing. But until that happens, again, we are not a party to those agreements. Those parties to those agreements would have to make those decisions. That's what they'd want to do with those documents.
Right, okay, thank you very much. Sheila Bernard? Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. Mr. Krikorian, you're a lucky guy coming into this crucible at the tail end of the proceedings, but for you old-timers, Councilman Reyes and Rizar, it's good to be here on a peaceful mission. I'm Sheila Bernard, President of the Lincoln Place Tenants Association. The tenants are aching for closure on this issue. We trust that this agreement is a win-win between the city and AIMCO. And I just, beyond urging you to finish this business, I want to thank Councilman Rosendahl, who's been our friend since before he was elected, and also the office of Mayor Villaraigosa, and everyone on city staff who participated in getting this settlement agreement to happen. And again, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your dedication too. The next set of cards, I'm assuming, but I hate to do that, but we have a group of folks, and I'm trying to distinguish. Ms. Stewart, you have yourself, Mr. Milston. Is Amanda Seward? Okay, come on up. So I wasn't sure you were part of the group team or not, or something. Okay.
Now I am. I feel like I am, but yeah.
A poor choice of words on my part. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Please. All right, let's go.
Yeah, I represented the historic effort, I think, the preservation effort on Lincoln Place. And as you know, it's been a really long battle, and this is a very important day. And Lincoln Place is a very important property. It's 5% of the rental market in Venice. For 50 years, it's provided very decent workforce housing in an important community. So it has been a long effort. A lot of people helped to get us here. Councilman Rosendahl, his staff, Norm Culla, who's already been commended, but also Arturo Pena, I want to thank too. And the mayor's office, they hung in there with us when we were giving him a lot of problems on this. And the city attorney, even AIMCO's attorneys, now we're all friends and love them. And I mean, it's just been an amazing adventure, after really doing battle for a very long time. And I also want to commend AIMCO. I could say, for finally coming to their senses, but it's more than that. They've been very enthusiastic about adopting a more scaled back development that was in the community interest, and they're just been, and they haven't been vindictive. We did a lot of things where they could have said, screw these people, and they didn't. They're here, and we're all together now with a common vision, and so we support this. We urge you to approve the agreement, enter into the agreement, and then also to do the follow-up. AIMCO has come to the table with a more modest development. Now it's our turn to say, we appreciate that. We want to help you get this through quickly. We want to support your efforts to make this a mixed income development. We want to support your efforts to make this a model conservation effort. So we need your help with that, and we really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. So, my assumption is that we have 4 cards that are a team of 1. Is that true? So we have with us Pat Schwades, Patty Schwades, George Milston, Cindy Stewart, and Sean Finnegy. And I'd like to come on up, and I believe you have a presentation. Good afternoon, ma'am, and congratulations.
Thank you. And I want to underscore what everybody else said. I am Patty Schwader, Senior Vice President of AIMCO. And I think it's really an understatement to say that we're thrilled, elated, amazed, and very happy to be with you today as you take up this agreement. It has been a long haul. We believe this is an historic agreement in more ways than one. It ends about 20 years of litigation. We've only owned the property the last 8 years or 6 years, so it preceded us. But this agreement and the companion agreements, which have already been spoken about, really chart a positive future for Lincoln Place, which has been mired in controversy and acrimony through the years. As Mr. Michelson said, there are 3 separate agreements, one with tenants, one with historic interests, and with your approval, the city agreement. Can't thank Councilman Rosendahl enough, the mayor's office enough, Austin Butner, who got us over the finish line, and Eric Garcetti and others for really providing us positive advice when it looked like this couldn't be done. Everybody in the city and our newfound friends and allies, we are on the same team now, really came together for this agreement. It allows 83 prior tenants, residents of Income Place, to come home. And I have to tell you that we welcome them home wholeheartedly, and we look forward to serving them in the years ahead. It returns hundreds of units to the RSO. That has been a hot issue, we know. It returns hundreds of units to the RSO. It enables more than $100 million in economic development. You saw our friends from the trade unions here today. Approving this settlement means jobs. Lincoln Place means jobs, and we believe it'll be at least 600 to 800 green jobs on this project. It also provides an opportunity for sustainable development and workforce housing. While we're doing it, as long as you have a 1950s property that has major needs, we might as well make it as green as possible, as sustainable as possible, and conserve energy while providing housing. And I know that this meets the city's goals and what you have said developers should do in the city of Los Angeles. So we're eager to be a partner with you on that. Thank you. We have an aerial here of the shot. If anybody missed it, I think that's in your packet. For the next slide, the total project is 795 rental units. It's on 35 acres, as Mr. Michelson said. These apartments were built in the 1950s and were occupied then. 5 vacant lots were removed by the previous owner, and so we plan to build 99 new units at a future time. Due to Amanda Seward's efforts and now our enthusiastic support, the site has been determined eligible as a historic district for listing on the California Register, and we plan to work with Ms. Seward and historic interests to help do the redevelopment under the Secretary of Interior's guidelines. There's a couple of pictures if you just want to rip through them. I don't want to take any more of your time because you know a lot about this. I think I already did that one. Go to the next one. There we go. These are the existing conditions. You can see we have some work to do. And now I'm going to turn it over to Cindy Starrett. I think you mentioned all of our team here, except for Steve Velke. I've got to say thank you to him. He's in the audience as well. George Milston, Cindy Starrett, Lucy McCoy is here. And I'm going to turn it over to Cindy to talk about the details of the settlement, and happy to answer questions. And again, our heartfelt thanks for sticking with us through this.
Mr. I just want to say that since as we get to this point, it almost feels anticlimactic, and everything that was behind you is like, wow, are we really here? And I got to share with you that every time I heard AMCO, I didn't really smile. It was kind of like, oh no. But now that I hear everything you've done, and the fact that you were able to change the environment and the dialogue to a place where we are dealing with human beings, and we are dealing with a real effort to think about what's just and what's fair, and that you stepped up to the place where you're at today is really amazing. So I just want to thank you, and thank you for allowing us to be in a place where we can say, we can work with investors, we can work with developers, and there is a common good, and that you see it and you're actually acting on it. And for that, I thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
And I'll finish up here. George and Sean Finnegan, who's the project manager, just here to answer questions. I just wanted to spend a couple minutes and talk about the next steps from today. Today is a wonderful conclusion to a saga, thanks to Councilmember Rosendahl and his staff and all the people that have been thanked today. But it's also the beginning of the next phase, and we're very excited about that piece too. The settlement agreements, if the council approves them tomorrow, and we hope your committee will make that recommendation to the council, there'll be a hearing June 7th by the court to approve all the settlement agreements, and we will then move forward in accordance with those agreements. Our historic preservation agreement, which Amanda mentioned, has detailed development restrictions and rehabilitation requirements. And among those, we wanted to thank the Office of Historic Preservation. Ken Bernstein and Lambert have worked very closely with us, so has the Planning Department. We want to thank them, and the Department of Building and Safety, because pulling permits for 700 units in a quick process is going to be a challenge, but we really appreciate all the work we've already done with them. We have our applications ready to file tomorrow. We have an appointment with the counter, hoping that the council does approve this in the morning. We had agreed with the tenants some time ago that 75 days after they got all their signatures, we would file our applications, and so we're meeting that obligation. And they got 200 signatures, by the way, so they did an amazing job. So tomorrow we will be filing our CEQA initial study. We'll be filing for a site plan review, to mention a couple of the planning issues that this committee is so expert in. We will be replacing the previously demolished units. They will be low-density, two-story units consistent with the existing heights. The facades of those units will be designed to be compatible with the historic district. And we very much appreciate the formation of a city working group that the city attorney mentioned. Truly, the mayor's office has been very, very helpful in working with the council office to bring all the departments together. And we know we'll be working closely with them going forward to make sure that the infrastructure funding and all the other pieces of this project can come together. Of course, nothing from the general fund, but we will apply for those programs for which we are eligible. And then we'll be preparing our construction drawings. This project has a budget of over $100 million when you look at the existing conditions of the units. We have a couple of pictures here. As Councilmember Rosendahl's office and Norm Cullah have pointed out, there are tremendous opportunities to introduce sustainability when we renovate these units. This shows the kitchen, and as I've learned from Sean Finnegan behind us and from all the work we've done with DWP and others, the opportunities for energy efficiency, water conservation, and many, many more aspects of this project are what we'll be working on going forward. And so then just finally, the job creation aspect of this has been mentioned, but we do want to thank our friends here from the trades, and maybe they just want to stand up really quickly just so we can all recognize them. We do have a project labor agreement for this project, and we really appreciate the work that we've done with them and the work that we'll be able to do together going forward. 600 to 800 green jobs is our estimate, and we are very excited about moving forward. And our last slide is just the vision, the landscape plan, low water plants, of course, that we hope to be able to present to you sometime from now. So we're happy to answer any questions, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Any questions, my colleagues? No, seeing none. I'm assuming Mr. Milston will not be coming in. Okay, pass. And anyone else on behalf of the team? Councilman Rosendahl, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and seatmate, Ed Reyes is my seatmate, so Ed knows a lot about this over the last 5 years, if not anecdotally, as I would come in from this, that, and the other, and he's very kind, and he's a good soul, so I could feel confident in sharing with him the good moments and the bad moments over Lincoln Place. This is a historic moment for all of us. We all know that success has 1,000 parents and defeat is an orphan. So when everybody here is in the room, it means that we were able to find the consensus that is critical in making things happen. I have to look at Sheila Bernard, because Sheila Bernard has been a warrior for 20 years, as have been the other tenants, fighting for what is right. I'll never forget the December 5th, 2005. I'd been on this council less than 6 months, and I went to Lincoln Place and watched the sheriffs ripping people out of their units. I'll never forget that moment, and I said, never again will this Ellis Act trump something that was clear and simple to a novice to politics, as I have been at that particular point. Unfortunately, the city attorney and the city attorney's office was lockstep against us all the way through until a few years later, when the council, in its reconstituted manner, in a closed session, the magic happened and the new day dawned right after that closed session, which became the beginning of why we're sitting here in the room today. So first, I need to thank my colleagues who stepped up to the plate after 2 years in a certain spot and realizing, and I was able to articulate it, which I couldn't when I first joined the council, the real story here that I felt needed to be told. Good news was the city policymakers, the city council, decided to move in a different direction. That took us to this moment now, years and years of continued follow-through. Without the help of Mike Bonin and Norm Culla and Arturo Pena from my office, I wouldn't be sitting here. They, working with all kinds of community people, including the preacher in the back and Noel Weiss over here, and a whole lot of like Patty and others here in the room, even George Milston, found themselves able to sit together and to find common ways in which we could all be on the same wavelength. And that did develop over the last couple of years. So let me read a little prepared statement for the record, but I'll say a few more after that. This agreement finally ends 20 years of dispute over Lincoln Place. With this agreement, my constituents are being treated with the dignity and the respect that they deserve. Lincoln Place will again be the home for 83 evicted households at a pre-eviction rental rates, and nearly 700 vacant apartments will be restored to the rental market as rent-controlled units. 99 demolished rental units will be rebuilt with a clubhouse and other recreation facilities with no density bonus and at a height that cannot exceed 30 feet. Now that's Amanda Stewart for you. She really had it together and fought this, frankly, even when I thought it was an impossible battle for what she was fighting for. But she got some eggs from me the other day when she was walking up my street, and I brought her to the back, which is the first time, Ed, she got any of my chicken eggs, which my colleagues have been getting for a while. So it is a great day for tenants, for preservationists, for Venice, and for everyone concerned with fairness and justice. The agreement represents the largest ever restoration of rental stabilized housing in the city's rental market. Facilitates rehabilitation of 668 historic eligible units and preserves them for at least 25 years. There's a lot of jobs in that for the building trades as we go through that in the worst economy in our history, those of us who aren't 95 years old. All of us in the room have never experienced what we're experiencing now, and to see the jobs creation and see this happen, it fosters the creation of green jobs, which is the wave of the future, to retrofit existing housing stock, to accomplish sustainability, weatherization, energy efficiency, and water conservation goals. It satisfies long-standing community desire to maintain current scale and character of residential development on the site, resolves all litigation against the city with no monetary liability or payout, creates a working group of city officials to support sustainability, energy efficient, and water conservation goals at Lincoln Place. I am deeply appreciative of the staff of the Los Angeles Housing Department, the Department of Building and Safety, the Department of Water and Power, Mayor Antonio Varelagosa, and our great city attorney for bringing his dynamic force to this effort. This deal would never have been achieved without our new city attorney. And he is a breath of fresh air and an advocate for the people. In 2005, as I mentioned in my off-the-cuff remarks, the owner evicted all but a handful of tenants. That was a brutal day. I will never forget that day, standing there and seeing that happen. And I'll never forget Chuck Snow, a man who was on his last legs at the time with a tank of oxygen to his mouth, and there he was standing there demonstrating for what was right. Last time I saw Chuck, he was in a demonstration. He had a Bible in his hand, and we prayed together a little bit. Little did I know he would pass on. But I might add, people who know me know that the dead never leave us, and I pray to them all the time. And frankly, Chuck Snow and I have been together ever since, every single day in my prayers. The agreement demonstrates that persistence and optimism pay off. If you refuse to lose sight of what is right, and if you continue to insist that people of differing opinions seek common ground, there is always hope for a fair solution. In the end, justice finds a way to prevail. We can finally move forward together. This day has been a long time in coming, but is finally here, and it is a win-win for everyone involved. And for me, the ultimate win-win will be when Sheila, Bernard, and the other tenants, all the other tenants, are back in their place, happy, and that the modernization of the buildings have taken place, and the greening of them, and then they're fully occupied with a thriving community that it was before and can be again. And I want to thank you, Ed, for your advice and counsel through the last 5 years as I dealt with it. And of course, I want to thank Jose Huizar for his vote in that whole moment of seriousness, and for our newest council member colleague to realize that one can take a position, stay firm, and over years and years finally be able to put it to bed. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Councilman. So congratulations to you. And, in every office, take it easy, Paul. I haven't voted yet. We will vote right now. Let me just read this thing. But, in every office, there's people that work really hard and into the night, and it's usually the staff that picks up that baton and carries it through in all respective offices. And the city attorney, I want to thank David Michelson, Colleen Courtney, and Julie Rio, because again, you're the folks that really make it happen in the trenches. So thank you very much. Congratulations. With that, colleagues, I'd like to read these instructions, and this would be what we would be voting upon. So the instructions are as indicated by our city attorney and with the approval, this is what we would be recommending. Recommend that council determine that the approval of the settlement agreement in the litigation entitled Lincoln Place Tenants Association et al. Versus City of Los Angeles et al. LASC case number BS 103560, semicolon, and Sassoon et al. Versus Enco Manicia LLC et al. LASC case number BC 390164 is categorically exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, and approve the filing of the notice of exemption attached to the city attorney Clerk report, and recommend that the council approve the settlement agreement in the litigation entitled Lincoln Place Tenants Association et al. Versus City of Los Angeles et al. LASC, case number BS 103560, semicolon, and Sassoon et al. Versus Enco Benicia LLC, LASC, case number BC 390164, attached to the city attorney's confidential and privilege report. And that'll be the action. You have a second on that? And that's unanimous. And that will be the action of this committee. Again, congratulations, and we see you in City Council. And that does call for public hearing as well. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Okay, Roberto, what's next?
Public comment.
Anybody have a public comment? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. We have somebody?
I know.
We have a public comment card? Come on up. Well, we open for public comment, and we do have Doug Haynes and Robert Blue.
Hi, thank you very much. I just wanted to make this committee aware that the planning department is now regularly assigning junior level planning staff to hear and determine land use applications that the municipal code and city charter explicitly require be heard by a zoning administrator. These include cases for variances, conditional use permits, adjustments, and modifications. The municipal code under section 12.27 clearly states that a variance must be heard by a zoning administrator. Section 562A of the city charter further states, quote, all applications for variances shall be heard and determined by a zoning administrator. Regarding conditional use permits, section 563B1 of the city charter states applications for conditional use permits and similar quasi-judicial land use approvals shall be heard and determined either by the zoning administrator or area planning commission. Regarding adjustments and modifications, section 12.28C of the municipal code states the initial decision maker for adjustments or slight modifications shall be the zoning administrator. Section 1228C3 of the municipal code further states regarding adjustments and slight modifications, quote, decisions by a zoning administrator shall be supported by written findings of fact based upon written or oral statements and documents presented to him or her. Both the courts and the Los Angeles Municipal Code define the word shall as to express what is mandatory. The planning department cannot therefore simply ignore the clear and unambiguous language of the city charter and municipal code. Do so puts the city at risk of having the courts notify all land use approvals improperly heard by junior level planning staff. The planning department has no written authority in the city zoning code to give a zoning administration hearing to a non-zoning administrative staff member to conduct that hearing. Junior level planning staff members do not have the technical knowledge or sophistication to conduct a proper hearing and make experienced and informed land use decisions. A hearing examiner makes recommendations on planning commission cases, and the zoning administrator makes final decision. Thank you very much.
Smith?
Thank you. I just want to reiterate what Mr. Haynes said, that it's something that's worth looking into. It's important that where the zoning administrator is called out, that the zoning administrator is used. In the long run, that'll save the city litigation as well. Before I start, I also wanted to thank Councilmember Krikorian for hosting the code enforcement this Saturday at the Sportsman's Lodge. That was actually more useful than I thought it would be. It was really good. The second thing I wanted to bring up was the issue of the Brown Act. I think that I'd like to compliment the city attorney for the job he's been doing as well. But back in April, I think it was April 14th, this committee heard agendized an item regarding SB 1818. And the representative from the city attorney's office kind of took a preemptive move warning people to limit their comments just to that issue. But I think people have the right to say they ask that it be taken back and reconsidered and maybe make suggestions. So in that regard, I think the city attorney's office acted inappropriately. The next thing I wanted to bring up was the historical cultural monument ordinance. We're going to refresh that. I know everyone works so hard. You have the downtown building owners and everyone in agreement. That's a rare thing to see, just like the settlement in Venice was today. I would just like to inquire on the status of that. I think it's scheduled to go back to committee. And finally, I did want to address SB 1818. I'm hoping that we can all look back at that, and it is an implementing ordinance. It's up to the city how to do that. So I'd respectfully ask that we want to have a transparency. So I would hope that we could do things like notice, like we normally notice, things like that. There's a lot more you can do, but at a minimum, not limit the noticing to just your next door neighbor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blue. And anybody else for public comment? Seeing none, this meeting now is really adjourned. I'll see you.